Hi, everyone. Shane from SiouxperCon here. I'm privileged and honored to be joined by Shea Fontana, author, writer, roller derby, spinner on ropes outside in her backyard. She does everything. She's out in California right now. She is safe. So I checked in earlier to make sure that everything was okay. Shea, welcome. Welcome back to SiouxperCon and welcome to our first virtual convention.
Thank you so much for having me. I really loved my time at SiouxperCon a couple of years ago. It was so great to get to know yourself and a few of the other people there and just hang out with the awesome people. And I'm glad to be back, even though it has to be this way, but I'm still glad that we had the chance to do this.
Yeah, it's, life necessitates change, right? And, we're lucky to have a director in Charlie who, although we had to cancel the physical convention, was like, okay, what can we do? Let's not dwell on the roadblock. Let's look at what can we do. So putting this together and having guests like you is what we came up with. So we'll see. It's kind of exciting and new.
It's fun, and it's actually I think that it's a nice way to be able to interact with the fans and still be there without being there. So I'm glad we're able to do something.
Do you miss convention? I know you don't go to a lot of conventions. You do signings, you do talks. I follow you pretty closely, but do you miss that interaction, Shea?
I absolutely do. It's been a very odd year, as we were saying. Yeah. I had my Batman Overdrive book come out right at the start of when everything was starting to close down. So I didn't get to do any signings on that. And that was really heartbreaking to have, the events canceled. It was like, it came out right at the beginning of March. So it was as things were starting to really shut down, especially in California. So I really feel like I missed that moment with the fans and having a new book out and that kind of party atmosphere and I have missed doing the cons this year. It's been you don't have those sort of impromptu interactions with people, like everything, like this is planned, everything has to be planned if you're going to talk to someone right now. So I really miss those just social interactions that are completely unplanned. The kid who's walking by your booth who's never seen the book before, who suddenly like, what's this, what's going on? Those kind of interactions are really the fun things that you get to have at Comic Cons that unfortunately we haven't been able to have this year. So I do absolutely miss it.
I think that's one of the most rewarding things as one of the organizers of a convention is watching the interaction between fans and the talent that we bring in, and watching kids light up when they saw the big superhero girl poster behind you, and people were like, "This is who writes it," and they're So yeah, it's awesome to watch that and to see that interaction. So Batman comes out, and a big part where I've seen a big push in your books and where I was first introduced to your books was through libraries. And it seems, the young adult section of libraries has been very good to the graphic novel industry, I think. Gene Lewin Yang, yourself, Judd Winnick, Kazoo. I think a lot of that exposure to books that are put out there has been through libraries. Libraries closed, bookstores closed, new book released. So has there been pretty good movement? Promotion, I suppose, has been, less. I suppose DC and Warner hasn't been able to put in as much promotion as they would have previously. So what's the reaction you've been getting on the book?
It's been really interesting. I have just yesterday, someone sent me a tweet of their son reading Batman Overdrive in bed. And it was like, it's those things that are like, just get my heart so much. And because it is such a special experience to be able to give that to a kid, to be able to have, when I was growing up, I'm sure there were comics that were for kids, but I wasn't really exposed to them. But I was absolutely a reader of anything else I could get my hands on. So have like, I remember just devouring the Little House on the Prairie novels, like all the whole series, and, you know, feeling so connected to the writer in that way. So it's really, such an honor to be able to have that connection with kids now, and to see them having their sort of first Batman graphic novel experience with something that I wrote. So I think that's really awesome. And it's, you know, as it is obviously another Batman book. Why does the world need another Batman book? And because kids currently, before Batman Overdrive, there had not been a lot of those sort of Batman books specifically for kids. And we haven't even had a sole Batman animated cartoon that has been specifically for kids for almost a decade now. And even the last Batman movies are now a decade old. So it's thinking of kids who were born, of course, every 5-year-old you meet on the street is going to know who Batman is. But they haven't had a lot of recent content specifically for them. So I was really excited to be able to do a Batman book and kind of show this other side of Bruce Wayne, a younger Bruce Wayne who is, you know, having those first inklings of, hey, maybe I could be a vigilante. Maybe I could, you know, help out Gotham. So it's been such a cool experience. And even though I didn't get to do the signings that I wanted to do and all those things, the reception has been really great.
Amazing. Shea, so when you're looking at tackling such an iconic character and rewriting him, you know, and if we look back to 2000, look at what Brian Bendis did with Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, and, you know, moving forward, we've seen new views of classic characters. Cami Garcia doing it right now with Raven and Beast Boy, yourself with Batman Overdrive. What's it feel like to be handed such an iconic character and go, okay, give us a unique point of view? You know, there's 80 years of history, multiple writers, TV, movies, books, comics. Now we want something unique that hasn't been seen. Can you kind of talk about the challenge of that and your thought process that went into that?
Yeah, Batman was definitely my first comic book love. Batman the Animated Series was absolutely my entree into comic book worlds, and really starting to be like, ooh, this whole good versus evil, superheroes versus supervillain thing is pretty cool. So I had just this base passion for Batman after doing 8 DC superhero girl books. When they were starting to think of the new middle grade and YA lines, they came to me and asked me what character I would like to attack. And I immediately said Batman, because in DC Superhero Girls, where I got to work with almost every character in the whole DC pantheon, we had probably by the end of the series, there were maybe 70 to 80 unique characters from the DC universe that were featured at some point in DC Superhero Girls. But we had purposely stayed away from Batman and Superman because they tend to have their capes cast quite the shadow over everyone else. So we very purposely wanted to make sure that the female superheroes were really standing out. And to do that, we had, decided that Batman and Superman weren't going to be part of the stories that we were telling, although they existed in the universe. They just weren't integral to our stories. But at this point, when they said, what character do you want to do? I was like, of course it's Batman. Batman is, he was my guy growing up, and he's who I really just passionately wanted to write at that point. So it was looking very quickly after they asked me about that, I got to the idea of, obviously when you're writing a middle grade book, you're writing a younger character, and starting to think of Batman or Bruce Wayne in kind of the wake of his parents' death, which of course in any Batman origin story, you have to cover that. That's just, if your parents were killed in front of you, that's going to be a very formative experience. You can't really side skirt that too much. So I started thinking about that, and thinking about Batman's relationship with Alfred at this point, which is a very weird thing when you think about it in the context of like, hey, there's this little kid and his parents died and he lives with the butler now. Like,
Right,
what
right.
is what is that relationship? And does he not have any other family members? What's going on here? And really starting to think about both that relationship and then the idea of Batman or Bruce Wayne getting the Batmobile. For me, when I was a young teenager, all I wanted to do was be able to drive. I know it's a little bit different now, but growing up in a very small town with not a lot of culture, not a lot of things around, driving meant everything. Like the ability,
yeah.
It was the ability to go to the music stores, the ability to
Right.
find a bookstore. It was, this freedom and culture and everything that, although the internet was in existence at that point, it was dial up and, it was certainly harder to get your hands on things. If I Napstered plenty of music at that time, but if you wanted to go buy a CD, you needed a car to do that.
Right.
So the idea of driving and the idea of how, married Batman is to the Batmobile and starting to think about like, what does that mean to Batman or a young Bruce Wayne to have that car? What are we starting to think about? And that was really my, the thing that I wanted to bring that was different to the whole Batman lore and starting to think about both the relationship with Alfred. We haven't seen, although it's been 80 years of comics, we haven't seen much of a teenage Bruce Wayne. That's kind of the dark years in a lot of the storytelling. And I, especially, when you think of like the 5 stages of grief, not to get too heady here, but like so many people, and especially when you start looking at Bruce Wayne in his common iterations, he's really stuck in anger in a lot of ways. He's really like, he's like,
I will punch my way through this grief. Yeah.
So I did want to, at the end of this story, maybe help him move beyond that a little bit, like set up a Bruce Wayne and a Batman who is, a little bit better able to cope with the tragedies in his life and has a better support system that's going to get him through this and maybe be a more emotionally stable Batman in the future.
It was a very unique take. Derek, my 12-year-old, absolutely loved it, and I have to admit I did as well. We read together, and okay, are you done with it? Then I get it, back and forth. One of the things I appreciate about all your writing, Shea, is your ear for conversation and the interactions between Alfred and Batman in that book, the interaction between all the main characters in Superhero Girls, and on your 4 or 5 issue run on Wonder Woman, the conversations seem real. Do you spend a lot of time listening to people and observing how people talk? Because I love that. I hate when I'm reading the book and it feels postured. Yours don't. They feel like real conversations that real characters would have, real people would have.
I certainly don't anymore because I haven't been out of my house for a long time.
No, I suppose there isn't much conversation between the dogs.
Now everything I write is just ref.
Right.
I do probably. I guess the nice word is people watch, but maybe it's eavesdropping. But yeah, I definitely, like if we're out at a restaurant, I will hear things that other people are saying and then like make a face about them to my husband, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. How do you know what's going on over there? So I think I am a bit in tune with that. And then also to me in my work, friendships are always really important. And I think maybe that comes through in conversations because I like writing people who aren't necessarily fighting all the time, but are having, those friendship moments, which I think can be a unique thing in a lot of superhero writing.
Well, it's even there in your animation, Shea. I think, as you've written scripts for animation, that friendship theme is very prevalent. I can't remember where I read it or where I heard it, but someone said, have the eye of an artist and the ear of a writer. And I never thought of the ear of a writer. I think of the mind of a writer, the talent of a writer, but not the ear of a writer. And yeah, that's I think that's an important gift, and one that you definitely have. What personal do you bring to your writing? How much of it is you in the characters?
I think there's always a facet of yourself within the characters. Even sometimes in supervillain characters, you have to find that, like, the empathy, like, what is that? How is that person the hero of their own story? What are they thinking here?
Right.
Moment. So I think it's impossible not to have some of yourself, because no matter what you're writing, you're always putting your own values, you're projecting what you feel about the world into, even if it is a licensed property where the characters are very established and the world's established, you're going to bring your own value system to what you're writing about and the things that are important to you. So I think there's always a facet of that. And I think it's always, people are so multidimensional. So I think we all have a little supervillain in us, and the part of us who can see, like, okay, if this happened to me and if that happened to me, maybe I would
Right.
there's a chance. So I think it is really important as a writer to have that empathy for different characters and the ability to kind of get into those characters' minds. And then I think just naturally there's going to be part of you in every character you write.
Yeah. I think there's I hope this word doesn't, I mean this word in the most complimentary way. There's a quirkiness that I enjoy about your point of view. I like the unique take. DC Superhero Girls, we gifted to my godchild, and she's drawn to them, and to hear her giggle as she flips through them and read them. But then I can pick it up and flip through and giggle also. So there's a fine line of, okay, here's a little piece for mom and dad, or for the caretaker, and here's a little piece for a bigger piece for the kids. And I like that about your writing. I think that's very, I don't know if it's intentional, but I find it in there that there's pieces that seem to be geared towards the adult reader as much as the child.
Yeah, I think in some ways. And I always, just from my own experience as a kid and how much I love the escapism of being able to go into a book, I always try to honor that from an entertainment and escapism point of view. Like, there are a lot of very, very serious writers for kids out there who are, trying to, every book needs to have a point where you're just weeping profusely because of the beauty of the world, which is certainly has its place, but it's not what I do. Like, I want to have those giggles. I want to just honor, kids and the entertainment that they're consuming, and that, sometimes you do need to get away from your world when you're a kid, and you do need to have, those lighter moments and the moments of levity. So I really like to bring that to things I do.
I think some of the great animation and literature that's geared towards young writers also has that appeal to it. I mean, I think about the old Looney Tune. I mean, very much slapstick, which and visual jokes, which appealed to the child. But I can go and watch those old ones now, and there was some pretty risque stuff that they added in, directed towards adults, and jokes that were over the head of the intended Saturday morning cartoon viewer. So I find little pieces of that. D7, which Derek and I have watched, I find little things like, oh, what are we doing there, Shea? But even, the backgrounds and everything in that are beautiful. And to, again, playing in a established sandbox and looking at a new view of the characters, that was a lot of fun. And those characters, that wasn't Mama's Disney version of it, was it?
No, not at all. There was definitely a bit of subversiveness to that show. So
yeah.
And I think, the interesting thing about it was, I don't think it was ever intentional. I don't think anybody in the writer's room was like, oh, we're going to be so subversive. It was just kind of how it worked out. And then there was like a point where Disney was like, this isn't for Disney Junior. We're going to go put this on Disney XD. And we're like, oh, maybe it's not for Disney Junior. Who knows?
Yeah, it has little bits and pieces that, yeah, definitely. It is. I think that's part, again, I'm personally am drawn to that. And I think there's a bit of the child in all of this that I hope we are all stimulated by animation, by reading, by graphic novels, by comics, so that we don't forget, that Peter Pan syndrome in all of us. I hope so, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talked about, Batman the animated series, the Little House books, which, by the way, now I have to get you to come back to physical SiouxperCon, and you need to fly in with your husband and the dogs a day early, and we'll get you up about 45 minutes from Sioux Falls, and you can go and see Laura Ingalls. You can go see the
I
Little
didn't
House
realize it was that close.
Yeah, it's all right in South Dakota and Minnesota. You can take the whole tour, within, at the furthest, 2.5 hours from here, and do the, all the houses, do all the books. But about 45 minutes from Sioux Falls, they have in DeSmet, South Dakota, Little House on the Prairie is right there. So, yeah, a lot of fun there. So what other books, what other TV, what other series kind of brought you into this fantasy and entertainment world as a child, as a young woman?
I think the most important series to me in my life, which I will reference every time I'm in a writer's room, is going to be The Simpsons. It hit at exactly the right time for me. It was very much a show that it was the one show that our family really all got together to watch on Sunday nights every week. So there was that specialness of like, okay, this is the 30 minutes that we're all going to be in the same room and everybody's going to be getting along. And it's like, there are episodes of The Simpsons that I can pretty much still quote from that time in my life. And it was sort of kind of the weird family language that we all kind of picked up on. Like my brothers, I have 3 older brothers, and we can just sit there and quote Simpsons back and forth. There's a Simpsons quote for every occasion. But especially, I have not kept up on The Simpsons, sadly, and that's my own fault. Not any failing of The Simpsons, that's me. But I would say in those early years, The Simpsons have just some of the best writing that you will ever come by. Just such solid joke structure and episode structure. And really, there are a lot of episodes that are sort of like heartwarming as well.
Yes.
Even though certainly looking back on some of the early episodes, I know they have shifted away from this a bit. You're like, Homer was a very abusive dad. They should have done, they needed to get out of there. But so there were certainly issues looking back that you have a different lens for, but it's just such great storytelling, and week to week, I mean, through all those seasons, they have really upheld, a great just template for any storytelling. And I feel like I do reference The Simpsons in just about every story that I'm working on and writing on, because they had, first of all, an amazing, those were the days of 26 episode seasons, where now, it's maybe 13 or 10, or depending on the platform. But the amount of episodes they just cranked out, and about, a lot of times those episodes were from the POV of Bart or Lisa, and really were about these kid characters in a way that you don't see as much anymore on sitcom TV, but has transformed into what we're seeing a lot on Nickelodeon and Disney now. Those sort of storylines are still super relevant and really inspirational for a lot of what we're doing on the kids animation side now. Yeah,
you're right on The Simpsons. And by the way, your family and my family completely different, because my family got together around, I'm older, by the way, but Wonderful World of Disney was our Sunday night, and then but my Sunday night as I got older was The Simpsons. And there are such touching moments. And immediately when you said that, I had the image of Homer and his bulletin board. Don't forget her, with Maggie, and just little moments, and it was tons of slapstick. And you're right, in a different lens from a different world. It's like, oh my God, Homer was a terrible father.
Yeah.
But he wasn't, because he was always erring on the side of love.
Right.
Short-tempered, yes, but and a doofus, but relatable for sure. Now I want to go back and reread and look for the little Simpson references and digs that are in there.
There are quite a few of them.
Almost like Where's Waldo, and now I feel bad that I missed them. Amazing book that you came out with. It's been about a year. Your collaboration talking about women creators through DC Comics. And right up here, Women of Action.
Yes.
Can you talk about the experience of creating that book and your process talking to the other women creators?
Yeah, so I can pull it out and do a visual. So this is DC Women of Action. So this was a book that DC and Chronicle were talking about doing a book, sort of like they've done a few of these Star Wars books about the women in Star Wars. And because I had done DC Superhero Girls, and through that process did a ton of research and read a lot of those classic issues starring a lot of our female characters, they reached out to me and asked if I would be interested. And it was such a fun process. So the premise of the book is by the time we finished, it was supposed to be 50, but I think we went to 53 profiles. Very nice.
There you are. There you are. Right.
It's profiles of both the female characters in the DC world, as well as some of the female creatives and executives who were a huge part of DC's legacy. So it was, as I started to look at a lot of the characters as well, I had the idea of going to the different creators who have worked on different books with these characters to ask them about how those characters inspired them, what their experience was like working with those characters, and how they got into those different characters growing up. So it's just such a great opportunity for me to be able to reach out to a lot of my heroes. I think maybe I was a little selfish on that, of like, now I have an excuse to reach out to all these people, and maybe they'll be my friends too. So, with you look at, obviously Wonder Woman is really where it all started with DC. She was just such a central character to the early comics, and incredibly successful. And then you have women like Gail Simone. One of my favorites was talking to Nicholas Scott about her experience, and she loved Wonder Woman from the time she first saw her as a little tiny kid. And it was so fascinating to see how these women have been so inspired by these characters in their own lives, and have been able to take what they've learned from these characters and make it into a career, and make it into what they do for a living. So that's really cool. And some of my favorites were being able to talk to some of the women who had worked on comics, especially in the early years, like Ramona Fradon was an incredible creator who is still, I think she's 94 now. She will still do commissions for you if you, there's a website.
Oh my gosh.
So if you ever want a commission by Ramona Fradon, Google it and you can get that. But I believe it was 1954 when she started at DC Comics as just, right out of art school, kind of not knowing anything about the comic industry, and being like, but I can draw. So here you go, we're doing this. So it was just such a fun experience to be able to learn about these women. And, especially DC has gone through a lot of the older comics and started to credit the women creators who were not credited at that time. So that's been a really cool thing that DC is doing, and really looking at, you know, there certainly was a time in comics when women were not very welcome, but there was still a lot of women behind the scenes doing a lot of the work.
Well, yeah, there was, I mean, a tremendous amount of finish work where actually the art you saw on the page was done by female creators, but the credit was given to male artists. You know, even you know, ghost writing. I mean, it's you're right. We're correcting the sins of the past, I hope. You know, and I really enjoyed your little encapsulations of the other creators that you were able to talk to, and you know, even just take a character like Wonder Woman. You know, so here's this established. We know, you know, Amazonian, Earth, sent to man's world, peace, blah blah. But you can take Gail's version of her. You can take your version of her, Jill's version of her. All these different versions, and see each writer pick up a different part of her personality or a different part of her past, and impart their own view into it. I think that's the beauty of legacy characters. Sometimes I think that comic book fans and genre fans get stuck in the minutia. This doesn't fit. She didn't act like this 32 years ago. Well, you're right. She didn't. Thank God. You know, let's find change. You know, so I loved. That's one of the things I have an eye for as a long time reader. Is I'm looking for new. I don't want to see the same old thing. I want to see your take on it. I want to see the next person's, Marguerite's take on it. In why can I think of it? Bombshells is a completely different take. I mean, very naive, open-eyed look at it. So it's a lot of fun to see those different views. Who do you get starstruck by?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if I felt particularly. I think, here, I'll put it this way. I think one of my attributes that has been very successful to me in my career is having just some strange confidence about, like, I'm just going to march up and talk to someone. So I don't know if Starstruck is necessarily a area that my personality goes to a lot. Sure. But there are certainly, like Gail Simone, we got to do a signing together a couple of years ago on Free Comic Book Day, and she is obviously so amazing and has done so much just incredible work in comics, and to, you know, really change the trajectory on a lot of these characters. So, you know, I don't know if the word is starstruck, but there are lots of women that I admire in comics.
Sure. Is there a dream pairing out there for you, Shea, that if you were to go, I want to co-write a book with, or whether that be an artist, or is there someone that you go, oh, that's who I want to work with, this calls for that person? Or is your work so personal that it can only be yours?
That definitely, the latter is not true. I love collaborating with people. I think one of the joys of comic books, especially in graphic novels, is getting the art back from the artist and seeing how much better it is than you could have ever imagined, and like how the experience is at every step of the way is building and making it better and making it better. You know, I always say, like, the unsung hero of the comic book world is the letterer, because if you're not actually making comics yourself, it's something I would have never ever have thought about, but a great letterer, just through, you know, the fonts and through the placement of the words and the balloons, can make or break a book in a way that you don't understand unless you're, like, on the ground floor watching it come together. So it's really exciting to see every person in the creative team just building on each other and making that project their own and making their contributions and collaborating. I don't want to say like a favorite that I would want to collaborate with, because I always feel like that somebody's going to watch and be like, oh, that wasn't me, huh?
Oh
Like,
yeah, right. Sure.
Because I would be the petty person that if it was someone I knew, I'm like, oh, you don't want to collaborate with me, huh?
Oh. Where am I on your list?
I'll say it hasn't been announced yet, but Agnes Garbowska and I are working on a new book together, and it has been super, super exciting to work with her again. Not only I met her through DC Superhero Girls, and you know, she is such a charming artist, and all that charm and heart that she puts in her art. As a person, she is all of that and more. So it's so great to be able to work with her and have someone who, you know, she loves comics. She just loves the medium. Yeah, so much. She has a sense of cute that not necessarily, you know, there are certain comic book artists that would have no idea how to bring cute to a panel, but she just has this charm and cuteness, and you know, you see her characters that she designs and you're like, I love them, I want to hang out with them, like these are my friends, I could be here. So I'm really excited about that, and I think there will be more details soon, we'll say that.
Shay, we froze up for a minute. We were talking about, that's fine. No, that's fine. No, I got the gist of that's on my end, by the way. It's not the California fires. The city where I live decided to redo both roads on either side of my property at the same time. So they're constantly digging and moving wires and stuff. So but you were talking about, yeah, right. It's been a joy. Talked about the cuteness that Agnes brings to the work and your new collaboration. And you're right, there is a joy to her artwork that's contagious. Now,
and
when you
I think that just appeals to me so much, because I want to make things that make people happy. I want to make things that make people smile, and she brings that in just such droves. So details will be coming out on that fairly soon. So actually, by the time this airs, it might be out in the world. Not out in the world, but the concept, the announcement.
Right. Very good. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. So when you work with her or with any of your artists, whether that be through animation or as a group of you writers coming up with ideas, do you throw things out ever to an artist? The artist goes, how about this instead, or that doesn't work from my eye. How much back and forth is there between you and the artist?
There is some back and forth. It has definitely been a learning process as I have gotten into graphic novels and writing, of like, what can be accomplished in one panel. Like, I think one of the things you see from young writers, early writers, a lot is trying to have too much in a panel, and to think at the end of the day the panel's like this big, and like so I think, certainly one of my things early on, especially with Yancey, on the first DC Superhero Girls books, because those were the first any sort of comic writing that I had ever attempted to do. I would like give so much detail in my panel descriptions of like, and there are 3 cups on the table, and the phone is over here, and he's like, and there was a point of like, what's the most important thing here? You get one important thing per panel. Like it's okay to be brief. You don't have to tell, unless the 3 cups are going to come into play on the next page, and we need to make sure there are 3 cups from the beginning. That doesn't matter. Like, there is really focusing on the pieces that matter. And I think there is some collaboration back and forth. Usually I get to see the art in progress as it's happening. So yeah, it's definitely a collaborative process with the artist.
Shay, what's next? I know you said we have a project coming up, but what's next?
So we have a new animated series that I've been the head writer on that's going to be coming out next year.
Okay.
I have a couple other things that are in the works that I also can't talk about, but I also have Polly Pocket. I've been the head writer on Polly Pocket for about 3 years now. So we have the first season is currently available on Netflix. And we have a bunch more that's going to be coming out soon. And it's not what you think Polly Pocket's going to be. And there's always, people kind of have this, they'll look in their eye and they're like, oh, Polly Pocket, huh?
Right.
But it is a show very much about a girl who is in her own right a sort of superhero, who is she's really helping her community and helping her friends through her ability of being able to shrink sort of like Ant-Man. So it's the very wacky, very cartoony, very slapstick style show. It is probably one of all of the writers that I have working on it just are always having a blast because it is the sort of slapstick that you can't do on a lot of other shows right now. It's very Looney Tunes inspired. So we have so much fun on that, and everyone who watches it loves it too. So it's check that one out. That one's fun.
All right, that'll be the next Derek and Dad watch. We'll try a little. Dude, I'm probably going to have to bribe him to get him to start, but we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a shot. He's 12. I have to bribe him for everything, Shea.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with you. It's just he's 12. So
he's probably growing out of it's more 6 to 9, I would say, on Polly Pocket.
Yeah.
The
he
target audience there.
He loves Tales of Arcadia on Netflix, is what he's really into, that he and I are watching right now, which is Guillermo del Toro. Yeah, it's very smart with him. Netflix has become an Amazon, Hulu. These have become great outlets for writers to bring their properties to the screen, and it's been kind of fun. Now DC has a streaming and a number of things. Are you writing specifically with a goal for any of those? Does that inspire you to go, oh my gosh, there's a new place?
It is definitely the best time to be an animation writer right now. It's beyond just the boom of having Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and all of these new streaming services popping up, and having just so much more content being in production right now than at any other point in my career. There's also the part where when the shutdown happened because of the pandemic, animation was right there. It was, the studios, people went in and got their computers, they went home, and everything has been rolling fairly seamlessly ever since. The one thing, as just like you and I have had a few times in this conversation, the hardest part has been the voices and voice directing, and because it is all done like we're doing it over Zoom, and we send the actors their microphones and the whole setup, and every once in a while you get back the audio and it's just completely unusable. Or we can't hear from our side anything that the actor is doing because there's some glitch over Zoom or Skype. So it's like, okay, we'll take 3, I guess. So that's been the most complicated part of it, but fairly seamlessly, everybody was just working from home. And, there's certainly a bit of the fun that you miss out on of like just walking past someone's desk and like, hey, that's really cool. What design's that you're working on? But it's really been amazing time in the industry of animation, just taking on the challenge of the times that we're living in and really rolling with it. So while, live action has been down for a while, and we're probably going to have a point in time, very sadly, where there's not a lot of new live action coming out, not a lot of new sitcoms coming out, but animation hasn't missed a beat. So I think 2021 is going to be the year of animation, because we're going to have so much of it new to premiere, while everyone else is going to be a little backed up as they get into production again.
Absolutely. You're spot on. Nick Simon, Hollywood director, is one of our guests for SiouxperConline, and he just shot a movie all via Zoom called
Oh, wow.
called The Unnamed Horror Movie. Vanity Fair did a great article on it. So he and a couple other of his actors, and I won't spoil that for everyone, but he does have 2 special guests jumping in on that as well. And he talks about some of the same things you have, like, okay, that was great, but we need to reshoot because your lips didn't match.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. We did a whole session where someone had a setting wrong, and like 4 hours of everyone's time.
Oh my gosh!
Like, oh, like we didn't record that, so
yeah,
so there's certainly those challenges.
Of course there, yeah. But you're right, animation, everything is done computer, and now we just send on to the next one. And we've talked with a number of creators, Phil Hester, Eric Burnham, they don't leave Minnesota and Iowa, and that was unheard of, right? You couldn't work from the Midwest. We were flyover country. Now all of a sudden, well, I can just ship this off. I can just send this. I can hit send, and it's to where it needs to go for the next step. A little bit harder to do with sitcoms, with live action movies. Not impossible, but a lot harder. I do have a couple of quick questions for you before we do a wrap.
All right.
And these are directly from our fans, and they are, number 1, are you influenced by Ramona Flowers? I had a guest on Twitter ask, who must have seen your picture, and perhaps, but they want to know if you're influenced by Ramona Flowers.
I enjoy Ramona Flowers as a character. I have never consciously put the 2 together, but maybe on a subconscious level. But this is actually, since the beginning of the year, I had not had my hair done, and finally a week or 2 ago, I got the at-home kit, and I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. It was the point. It's the point where the boredom matches the level of risk taking that you're willing to do. So I think it turned out pretty good, but
I think it was
not
a combination
as good as
of
having
the roller
someone
skating.
do it.
Sure, but the roller skating
and the roller skating.
Yeah.
Well, there is that as well. So, roller skating, I did not grow up roller skating. At some point, that I went to a roller derby game, and my eyes were just like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? This is so cool. I want to be like those women. And then I kind of fumbled my way through it for a while. I love roller skating. Obviously, right now, no roller derby is happening because it is a full contact sport. And roller derby was actually one of the first sports organizations that really had a plan going out, like, okay, when levels are at this is when we can start doing no contact practices, and so it's really been cool to see roller derby. There was a moment when everybody was like, hey, the women have it together on how they're going about this and how they're going to deal with the pandemic and deal with reopening the leagues and things. But yeah, so I do miss it very much.
That was, by the way, that question was from Holly Weird on Twitter. So this next question is from Nicola on Twitter. And Nicola wants to know, who is your dream character, the one that you want to write before your career is done?
Ooh, I feel bad answering this question because I feel very cocky answering this question, but I've already done it. Wonder Woman first,
Batman.
was and then Batman. I don't know who beyond that is bigger and more amazing and more of an honor to be able to write. But then, I have been very lucky to write a lot of licensed characters and a lot of pre-existing characters, and from the Seven Dwarves to Wonder Woman. I've had Mickey Mouse. I got to do a lot with Disney on Ice. I got to write a lot of the classic Disney characters and a lot of the Pixar characters. So really, I feel like my next step in my career is writing a lot more original stuff. So I would love to create a character that maybe is not at the heights of Wonder Woman, but could sit in the same room as Wonder Woman one day.
And it's such an amazing time right now in comic books for the ability to create your own characters and to carry that, create our own properties. Image, TKO, Boom, Dark. I mean, there's tons of them, and then the new, or just doing a Kickstarter, which is obviously been very successful for a number of creators. But yeah, it's an exciting time as a reader. It must be an exciting time as someone inside the industry as well. It's also a little fear, I imagine, taking that big jump.
Yeah, I guess so. It's really, writing existing characters has its own perks, and it's definitely, but I think the appetite for the general public I think people are just consuming a lot more than they used to consume in entertainment. I think, people are willing to take a chance on a creator-owned comic book like they haven't been before. It used to be, you walked into a comic book store, you would get Batman or Superman or you went to the things that you knew, and still certainly that is where a lot of people are. But I think people, especially with just the quality of content that's come out of a lot of these creator-owned books, has been so high and so incredible that people are really open to supporting more creator-owned content. So it's really exciting to have that shift in the comic book industry.
Absolutely. Well, Shea, I have greatly enjoyed our time. I wish it was in person. And hopefully, in 2021, we can all be at conventions again and having fun. And, maybe the day of the deep hug is gone, but at least maybe a Wonder Twins Power Activate fist bump. And
Absolutely.
I have to say, from a personal standpoint, that having you come to SiouxperCon and then the support you've given my family, thank you. I mean, sincerely, thank you for the support you've given SiouxperCon and my family. It's been wonderful. Our entertainment life is better because of you, and our personal life is better because of you. So thank you, Shea, very much.
Well, thank you. And it's been, so fun to have met Derek at SiouxperCon. I guess it was 2 years ago. And then just see what a warrior he's become, and just how strong and what an incredible fighter he is. It
is. Be safe out there, please. You don't need to. Don't walk into the light. It's hot.
Yeah,
it looks like Mars out there,
weird
man.
Out there, it is. It's very weird going out this morning, and it's just the sun is bright red ball in the sky. But hopefully, the firefighters are working hard. I hope that it all gets cleared up soon.
Very much so. Okay. Thank you so much. Be well. And we will have this up October 3rd and October 4th for SiouxperConline.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shane.
Yep. Bye-bye, Shea.
Bye.